Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's presentation on Finding Peace Consulting's trauma informed model. My name is Troy Love, and I'm going to be with all of you all tonight. I'm very excited to be with you. I've decided to present it this way so that you can see the slides without my big head in the way. And then I can also monitor the chat a little bit better. So please forgive me for not being seen tonight, but I am here and I'm responding with all of you via chat. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat and I will do my best to answer them. So welcome. So I have a question for you. It's a question I ask nearly every time I do a presentation, and I'd love for you to put your answers in the chat box. So here's the question. When you see this word on the screen, what other words do you associate with it? I'm going to give you about 10 more seconds to give some answers. What do you associate peace with? Now, let me ask you another question. How many of you have so much peace in your life that there isn't room for more? As a therapist, as an author, as an educator, I've asked that question to thousands of people, and only one dude's ever raised his hand. He said, "Yeah, dude, I totally have so much peace in my life." And I think he was high because everywhere else I go, everyone tells me they could use a little bit more peace. They could use a little bit more joy. They could use a little bit more love, a little bit more serenity, a little bit more tranquility in their lives. Well, what is it that disconnects us from that sense of peace? What is it that disconnects us from love, connection, joy, tranquility, all of those things? Well, it's a four-letter word that I am allowed to say in a webinar: pain. And truthfully, we don't have to look very far to see there's a lot of pain in this world. You can look out the door and see that there's people struggling with homelessness, mental health issues, suicidal ideation, families falling apart, poverty, inflation, health concerns, epidemics. The list goes on and on. The world is in turmoil, and we could use a whole lot more peace in our lives. As a therapist, one of the things that I've learned along the way is that we are wired for connection. Biologically, neurologically, socially, spiritually, energetically, we are wired for connection. And if something happens that breaks that connection or severs that connection, it can cause some of the most excruciating, painful experiences of our lives. Over time, if these experiences happen over and over again, or if they are fairly big events, what we call capital T trauma events, what ends up being developed is what I call attachment wounds. And over the course of my work, I've identified six of them: loss, neglect, rejection, abandonment, betrayal, and abuse. As you think about the clients that you're working with, as you think about your own personal lives, you can identify probably that your clients have at least one of these wounds and probably several. You could probably even identify that you have some of these wounds and probably several of them. Being able to help your clients understand and give words to these wounds can be incredibly helpful One of my heroes, Mr. Rogers, said, "What is mentionable is manageable." And therefore, being able to identify that, hey, I have a rejection wound, or hey, I have an abandonment wound, is something that can be incredibly, incredibly helpful. These wounds are like a sunburn. How many of you have ever been to the beach and you did not remember to put sunblock on and you got completely sunburnt? But you have to go to work the next day or you have things to do. And so you wake up in the morning and you gingerly put some clothes on because it is recommended that you wear clothes to work, and you go to the office and you already have your guard up. You already have your spidey senses out to make sure that nobody comes up to touch you, because you know that if they do, it's going to be incredibly painful. But then Bob from accounting comes up from behind you and he slaps you on the back and he says, "Hey, how was your vacation? How was the beach?" And immediately your body has a visceral effect. You either want to pull away or you want to push away in order to deal with this pain. That is your fight or flight response happening at its best. You're trying to pull away or you're trying to push away in order to get away from this painful stimulus, this thing that's causing pain. Well, that's what happens with these attachment wounds. The longer that we have them, the more that they develop. We have these unhealing wounds in our lives, and somebody can do something that will bump up against these wounds. It may be a look, it may be an action, it may be something that is relatively minor, and yet, as somebody bumps up against these wounds, there is that same fight or flight response. We pull away or we fight our way out. And a lot of times we don't understand why. Why is this happening? Why am I reacting this way? It's not really that big of a deal. And yet I am reacting in exactly the way that I don't want to react because it hurts. Well, in the language that I say, one of my wounds has just been hit. Let me go over a little bit of the definition of each of these wounds really quickly. Loss is a wound that happens when somebody has lost someone who's close to them, usually because of death, usually because that person passed away, sometimes unexpectedly, sometimes expectedly. It can also happen when your best friend moves across the country, or you have to move across the country, or it could happen that because of the financial climate, you got laid off from your job. And so there's loss there. You had something and now it's not there, but it's not because anybody did it purposely to you. It's just a part of life, but it still can hurt profoundly. The next wound is neglect. There's the Child Protective Services version of neglect where mom and dad are gone for days and the kids are in the house and they have no food and they have no ability to really care for themselves and the electricity's been turned off. And so there's a lot of neglect going on in that home. But there's also the more modern version of neglect, which is mom and dad are on their cell phones, they're very busy at work, the kids have emotional needs that need to be met, and they don't have anybody to turn to get those emotional needs met. True, they may have their physical needs met, they may have a roof over their head and food in their tummies, but when they have emotional concerns, they don't have anybody to turn to because their parents are too busy. The third wound is rejection. Rejection is when you're told that there's something wrong with you, that you don't belong, that you should not be here, that you don't deserve to be a part of this group, and therefore you need to get out, leave, because we don't want you here. The next wound is abandonment. Abandonment happens when somebody leaves. They walk out of your life. You don't know why they were gone. One day they're there and the next minute they're not. And you're not sure where they went. There's no closure, there's no explanation. And so you're just left with a lot of not having any answers, which causes a great deal of turmoil and a great deal of fear that somebody else is going to do that to you. The next wound is betrayal, where you had a relationship of trust with somebody And then they did something that violated that trust. They lied to you, they cheated on you, they stole from you, they took things from you without your permission. They did something that violated that trust, and now there's this betrayal that's happened. And then lastly, abuse. Sexual abuse, physical abuse, spiritual abuse, emotional abuse, where somebody is taking their own woundedness out on somebody else. They're inflicting pain on somebody else. So your clients and yourself may have all of these wounds. You may have several of these wounds. Some of these wounds may lay dormant for a long time. Some of these wounds have healed, but we can all have these attachment wounds. And then we go through life. We interact with other people. We fall in love. We make friends. We interact with people at work. And chances are that somebody is going to bump up against one of these wounds and it's going to hurt. But I often tell people it's not actually the wound that causes us suffering. It's what we have come to believe about ourselves as a result. I'm standing on the soccer field of my middle school. I have been assigned to be the goalie in soccer. And to be honest, I really suck at sports. I'm awful. I'm no good. So I'm really grateful that I am the goalie, which sounds a little strange, but the other boys on my team are really good at playing soccer. And so they're down at the other end of the field, exactly where they need to stay. Please stay down there. Do not bring the ball over here because if you do, I'm probably not going to be able to block it. So just stay down there. It's fine. Just stay down there. And so I'm standing there looking at the freshly cut grass, smelling the grass smell, looking up at the sky and the beautiful blue sky and the clouds, and just kind of minding my own business, really hoping that that ball stays down on the other side. When all of a sudden I feel a tug on my shorts, and I look down, and my pants have been pulled all the way down to the bottom, along with my underwear. And two boys are running away, laughing and snickering and pointing fingers at me. And I probably would have laughed if I had thought it was just a practical joke, but I knew that it was much more than that because I knew what was going to happen when I went into the locker room because it happened every day. I'd go into the locker room and the boys would surround me and they would say names. They'd call names like faggot, femme, and some names that are not appropriate to say in a webinar, and all kinds of other names that I didn't quite understand. And some of them would try to punch me. And every day this happened from sixth to eighth grade. And sometimes these boys would wait outside after school and they would try to chase me home and beat me up. So I learned how to run really fast, really, really fast. So that wound of rejection really got solidified there in gym during middle school. But as I just said, it wasn't the wound itself that caused suffering. It's what I came to believe about myself as a result. What I came to believe about myself is the first genre of core beliefs. The first genre is the I am genre or the identity genre. I am flawed. I am defective. There's something wrong with me. I'm not enough. I'm 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 bad. I'm no good. When you are working with clients and they've had bad things happen to them, oftentimes when you talk to them about how they feel about themselves as a result of these things happening to you, they will say things like, I'm bad, I'm no good, I should have known better, I'm weak, those kind of things. The second genre of core belief is the trust or safety genre, which is all about how we feel about the world around us. I have a pretty big abandonment wound, and there are often times when that abandonment wound gets triggered. And the core belief that I've developed about that is that there's really no one who's going to be there when I need them. Yes, they say they're going to be there, and they even send texts and phone calls saying, "Hey, I will be there if you need me." But when I actually want to reach out to somebody, chances are they're busy. So that what that does is that reinforces the negative core belief that I can't really depend on other people to be there for me. Other versions of that are people are unsafe, people hurt me, people are unkind, people are abusive. But the bottom line with this is the world is not safe. My world is not safe. And the third genre of core belief has to do with power or powerlessness, usually, which is there's nothing I can do. No matter what I try, no matter how hard I try, there's nothing I can do to make this any better. So you can imagine being a sixth or seventh grader and feeling like I'm like puny little kid. I'm not kidding. I was super short, weighed probably 75 pounds. I was horrible at sports. And so I'm no good. I'm weak. I'm a wimp. I'm unwanted. I can't trust these boys, and there's nothing I can do about it. That's that trifecta of negative core beliefs. So think about a client that you've had who's had some bad things happen to them. Can you identify what maybe some of their negative core beliefs have developed over time? Now, here's the weird thing: when they're having a good day, these core beliefs are not necessarily running active, they are dormant. But when that wound gets hit, viscerally, automatically, that wound gets activated because it's been wired into our nervous system. It's been wired into our amygdala and our hippocampus to get activated when we experience that pain. We automatically go there. And so part of the healing process is figuring out how to rewire that, which we'll talk a little bit about more in the future. When these wounds get hit and that core belief starts running, we're going to feel some feelings. We will feel some anger, maybe. We might feel fear. We might feel sad. These are three of what we call the core emotions. Now, I know that there's more than just these three, but oftentimes when I'm working with clients, they have a hard enough time understanding any of the emotions they might be feeling. And so I give them a choice from these three, and then we can go on from there. So they may feel anger. Anger comes from a sense that something has been taken from you without your permission. You did not give consent for that thing to be taken, and therefore you're angry about it. You want to get it back. You want to fight for it. You want to take it back and say, no, that's not okay. I didn't say that was okay. Sadness comes from a sense that you're losing something or you've lost something and it's not coming back. And so it's a grieving emotion. It's a sad, grieving, saying goodbye kind of emotion of realizing that this is not going to be the same as before and I'm going to miss it. And fear comes from a sense that something really bad is going to happen and I'm powerless to stop it. That no matter how hard I try, it's probably not going to be stopped. It's just going to be awful. So these are the three core emotions that we typically feel when our wounds get hit and our core beliefs are activated. Now, I would love for you to type in the chat if this has happened to you. You grew up in a home, like give me a thumbs up in the chat if this is something that's true for you. You grew up in a home where emotions were welcomed. We could talk about our emotions in a really healthy way. I could share that I was angry and my parents would be really, really understanding. Or I could share my sadness and I could cry and my parents would welcome my tears and would give me hugs and wouldn't say things like, I give you something to cry about. Stop your whining, knock it off. How many of you grew up in a home where your emotions were welcomed and shared? That's not the experience for most of the people that I know. And so what we learn instead is that our emotions are not okay. And so instead of feeling like it's okay to feel these emotions, we end up feeling what Brene Brown refers to as the master emotion, which is shame. Shame covers everything that we've just been talking about. Shame covers our wounds, doesn't want anybody to know that we feel these wounds, that we have these wounds. Shame exacerbates the negative core beliefs and amplifies them, really telling us that we are unworthy of love and belonging, and there's nothing we can do about it. And shame tells us that we're not allowed to feel what we're feeling, that we need to knock it off. And so we're feeling these experiences, we're having these experiences, and yet we're supposed to knock them down. We're supposed to smother them and not feel them and just be small and pretend that everything's okay. Well, when we do that, to be honest, what ends up happening is that we are feeling even more pain than we were before. And now we have to find a way to numb that pain. We have to find a way to numb it. For a lot of the people that I work with, they've turned to pornography as a way of numbing that pain, or they've turned to food, or they've turned to sex, or they've turned to workaholism, or they've turned to alcohol, or they've turned to cutting themselves, or they've turned to becoming super controlling. I'd love for you to put in the chat, what are some of the ways that either you or people you know numb their pain? Take a look at all the ways that we come up with that we numb. Now, here's the dilemma. The more that we numb, especially if it goes contrary to our value system, the more shame we feel. And so we feel more shame, we feel more unworthy, we feel more like we're a piece of crap. And so then we numb some more in order to try and make that pain go away. And the more that we numb, the more that our shame gets louder and more obnoxious. And then the more that our shame gets louder and obnoxious, the more that we numb. And you see the cycle. It becomes really, really challenging and overwhelming until eventually we move to the last circle of the model, which is called the mutated emotions circle. Now, mutated emotions are not bad or good. They just mean that the emotions have become bigger, more complicated, more grandiose, really. So, anger can mutate into rage, resentment, bitterness, apathy. Sadness can mutate into depression, melancholy. Fear can mutate into anxiety, hopelessness, panic. I don't know about you, but that's usually when the clients come because they don't want to feel this way anymore. They're looking for a way to feel better. And so, how do we help them feel better? Well, in the model, there's several places that we could start. And that's part of what's so beautiful about the model from my perspective. I can start at the beginning and take a look at the attachment wounds. I can start in the middle and take a look at ways that we numb and why we numb. I can take a look at shame and how shame shows up in our relationship. I can take a look at the emotions that we're feeling and give us space to be able to feel them. I can even start at the very center and dealing with pain at a visceral level before it has words and do some work somatically, helping people through breath work or somatic work. I haven't found a model of therapy that doesn't fit with this model, whether it's CBT, DBT, somatic body work, internal family systems, EMDR. I could go on and on. Part of the beauty of this is helping people be able to have language to discuss what is going on with them and help them come back to a sense of peace. Let me introduce you to Mary, who recently went to one of our retreats, and have her share what her experience was in being able to put words to what was happening.
I am not the retreat kind of woman. When I was invited to attend the Finding Peace retreat and blog about my experience, my first instinct was to say no. In December of 2021, I went through a painful breakup that set my healing journey in motion. I really dislike the phrase healing journey, by the way. It's as if I will reach a magical destination where I no longer feel pain. Either way, I decided to try and work on myself so that I could emotionally and spiritually get into an improved headspace. After a few failed romantic relationships, I started to realize that I could be the problem. That was fun. I started reading all of the self-help books. I would call my best friend at 9 p.m. and ugly cry because I came to a stunning realization that I was, in fact, codependent. Sorry, Elisa. I joined kickboxing so I could start punching things instead of crying on my couch and mindlessly watching TikToks to disassociate from the pain. Through this process, I met new friends, jump-started the healing process, and then Finding Peace found me. I was coming face to face with some deep-rooted wounds of my past. Wounds that I didn't even know were affecting me in my day-to-day life. Wounds that I absolutely did not want to address, but there I was addressing them. For me, it felt messy yet necessary. I was all in. I would look around. Some people were crying, some dancing, some reading, some talking, some hugging. But one thing we were all doing was processing. I am a strong, independent woman that has handled everything that has been thrown at me. My parents' divorce, my own divorce, the death of my father, failed relationships. Why was I being so emotional? I was beating myself up for being vulnerable. I did not want people to see this weak side of me. Finding Peace has given a name to my pain. It is a process for identifying our attachment wounds, our negative core beliefs, the feelings associated with those beliefs, and the inevitable feelings of shame felt when the wound is activated. I can choose to step into my new truth. And what is my new truth? I am open to receiving the love that I give to others. I deserve love, not just romantic love, all love. I am worthy of respect, love, and all of the desires of my heart. Adequacy, excellence, hope, excitement, happiness, laughter, love, trust. Finding Peace goes far beyond a 4.5-day retreat in the woods of Prescott, Arizona. It takes consistency, determination, focus, discipline. Finding Peace is a beautiful, sometimes messy, but effective process for moving beyond our shame. When I started my healing process on my own many months ago, Finding Peace found me. My heart is healing, forgiveness and grace are overflowing. I am inspired, I am living my new truth. I hope that one day you can do that too. I promise you, this is so much better than the Julia Roberts Hollywood version of healing anyway. Why? Because this is real life, you are a real person, and you deserve peace too.
One of the fascinating things that I've discovered as I've continued working with this model is just how much this shows up in couples work. When we fall in love with someone, there's something magical that happens with our attachment wounds. There's twitterpation, this beautiful sense of all is well in the world. And during that time of falling in love, it's like our body has been injected with an anesthesia that nothing is going to ever hurt us again. And so when our partner bumps up against our attachment wounds, we don't think anything of it. It doesn't even hurt because we're just like, oh, I'm so in love. It's so amazing. This is going to be the life for me. And we hug and kiss and we spend time together and we bump up against each other's wounds and we can't even tell because it's just fine. It doesn't even hurt at all. And then the longer that we're together, then this anesthesia starts to wear off. And pretty soon my partner's bumping up against my attachment wounds and I'm bumping up against my partner's attachment wounds, and all of a sudden my body's doing that thing where I want to pull away, just like from Bob with the counting. I'm pulling away, or I want to push away, and I'm fighting, and I'm angry that things are not happening, and this is not the way it's supposed to be. And then I'm behaving, going right into that fight or flight response. I'm behaving in exactly the way that's going to make my partner react in exactly the way I don't want my partner to react, and they're gonna push me back. We're gonna push and pull, and I'm gonna hide and all of those things, and it becomes this this horrible cycle that becomes a pattern in so many couples' lives. I do a lot of work using Sue Johnson's emotionally focused couples therapy model. And being able to insert the attachment wounds into that model helps clients be able to understand what it's like for them to be able to see, oh, I am bumping up against your wounds and you're bumping up against mine, not from a blaming perspective, but from a wound care perspective. Here is one person's experience in using the finding peace model in their relationship with their partner.
My wife and I felt like we were living separate lives in the same house. Our relationship lacked communication and a sense of connection and closeness. By taking the relationship's course, I learned how to see my spouse as a person instead of an obstacle. I practiced empathic listening and holding space for her instead of selectively listening to her problems or experiences and trying to either solve the problem or minimize it. My biggest takeaway from the class was learning how to empathically listen to my wife's feelings and how to better understand and effectively communicate my own feelings in a healthy way. This program literally saved my marriage. My spouse and I had been discussing divorce before we learned about this class. Now we both feel much more safe, much more understood, and much more connected than we ever have. We have lots of work still to do, but we both feel very positive about the future, and we are excited to go there together.
Now, as I mentioned earlier, one of the things that I use this model with primarily is with men who are struggling with their addictive behaviors. I also work somewhat with partners who are struggling with betrayal trauma as a way of helping them heal as well. When we're working with an individual who's struggling with addiction, they get stuck in that trap of feeling pain and then resorting to their numbing behavior to try and make it go away, and then they feel more shame. What I've discovered working with individuals who are struggling with addiction is that what they're really addicted to is the shame. Yes, there is a moment of a dopamine spike that feels amazing, that lasts for 5 seconds or something. But what they really are looking for is that shame hit, because deep down, they have adopted the negative core beliefs that I'm not enough. I can't turn to other people. There's nothing I can do. And they it's almost like they need those core beliefs to continue to perpetuate their behavior. And so over the years I've created a path to peace model that has helped individuals really get a sense of what's going on with them and to begin to create a different narrative so that they are able to remain sober. I've been asked often, well, what do we do now that I've identified that I have these wounds and I feel them? What do I do about them? Well, there are two ways to heal these wounds. First is through connection. The way that we heal attachment wounds is through connection. And secondly, through self compassion. The way we cut through that shame, the way we deal with that overwhelming burden of shame is to cut through it with a sense of self compassion, which is enormously difficult to do because shame really does not want us to believe in ourselves, love ourselves, be kind to ourselves. So, I want to share with you an activity that was originally developed by Kristen Neff. You can learn more about her work on self compassion by going to self-compassion.org. And on there, she has a simple exercise called the self compassion moment. And I would like to help you walk through this. It's a very simple tool that you can use with your clients when their wounds are hit and try to help them connect with the love that they need in order to create space for those wounds to heal. And so I want you to close your eyes for a moment and get into a place where you can be comfortable as we begin. I invite you to take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth, doing that several times to allow yourself to become a little bit more grounded. And now, as you take a look at those attachment wounds that you've just identified, and you've selected the one that seems to be the one needing your attention today, I want you to give yourself permission to reflect on when that wound was recently hit, recently bumped, or even going further back in time to when the wound was originally created. And allow yourself for just a moment to lean into the memory of this pain, of this wound. And I want you to say out loud, "This is a moment of suffering." And as you say that out loud, validate to yourself that this wound really does hurt. That it really does have a lot of pain connected to it. Validate that it's been there for a while and it has caused a great deal of suffering. We don't have to pretend that it doesn't exist, and we don't have to bury it. As we do this first phase of the self-compassion moment, we honor that the pain is real and that it really does hurt. And now, take a deep breath and let it go. And now I invite you to say out loud, "I am not alone in my suffering." Even today, as you are attending this meeting, you will know that there are others here who also have wounds. They most likely have the same types of wounds you have. So we know for certain that we are not alone in our suffering. There are people here who understand our pain. There are people on this planet who understand the wounds of being rejected or neglected or abandoned or abused or experienced loss. And so in your mind's eye, just see the connection. See the loving light that comes from these people who understand and have empathy for our wounds and are there to try and help lift us up and give us strength. And we do the same for them. And remind ourselves that we are not alone in our suffering. And take a deep breath and let it go. And now I invite you to do some act of self-compassion for yourself, whether that is putting your hand on your cheek, or giving yourself a hug, or doing some gesture using your body to give yourself compassion, to be kind to yourself. And then I want you to say out loud, "May I be kind to myself." And as you think about that wound that hurts so badly, what is it that you need to hear right now? What is it that somebody could say to you that would help this wound not hurt so badly? That maybe would tend to the wound just a little bit and decrease the pain and the suffering connected to it. What is it that you need to hear? What words of comfort could be said that would help take care of this wound for you? And as you ponder upon what it is that you need to hear, I invite you to say those words out loud to yourself as you are embracing yourself with that act of self-compassion. And then take a deep breath and let it go. And just notice how it feels to be able to care for yourself in this manner, to lean into the discomfort, to recognize that you are not alone in your suffering, and that you can be kind to yourself. I invite you to open your eyes and just take a look at the names in the chat and see if you can think of somebody following your heart, following that impression, that needs to hear that very message that you just said to yourself. And then I invite you to type that message to that person, or to type it to all of us, whatever feels more comfortable for you. Just repeating those same words that you just said to yourself, passing them on to somebody else, and then just breathing into that love for yourself until the breath ends. The way that we heal attachment wounds is through connection and compassion. When I was a social worker, early on in my experience, I worked in a hospital. It was long before the day of electronic medical records. It was during this time that they had big old charts and we would flip through them, and the social worker's note was at the very back of the chart. And so I was always flipping through all of the pages to get to my section. Part of my job was working with clients or patients to help them go home, help them go home with home health, or if they needed wound care set up or home nursing or rehab or whatever, those kind of things. That's part of my job. And so I'd work with patients and their families, and then I'd go document what I'd done. So I was flipping through these charts, and sometimes I would come across patients who have pretty profound wounds. And when they were really bad, they would call in the wound care nurses who had specialized training in knowing how to identify the type of wound that the patient had, and then provide some recommendations of what could be done to help that wound heal. I remember stumbling upon one picture of a patient who had a really bad pressure ulcer. It was called a tunneling wound. You could literally put your hand inside the small of the patient's back and stick it in a couple of inches. It was so big and so deep. And the nurses were really, really worried about closing that wound. And so the wound care nurses came in and made their recommendations, because the consequences of not closing that wound could be lethal for this patient. And truthfully, the consequences of not closing and healing and addressing our attachment wounds can be just as lethal. So, one of the benefits of being able to put words to these wounds is you also have a sense of what is needed to help them heal. So let's take a look at the 6 attachment wounds one last time. The opposite of loss is, of course, gain. But when we're dealing with attachment, the opposite of loss is comfort, assurance. So my grandma died, and I'm sad, and I miss her. And what do I need during that time? I need comfort. Need someone to put their arm around me and let me know that I'm not alone, and assure me that things are going to be all right, and hold space for me to cry and not tell me I shouldn't feel sad, but to be able to give me space. And so when my lost wound is being hit, what I need is assurance, comfort. When my neglect wound is being hit, what I might need is attention. I'm feeling neglected. I'm feeling like there's nobody that really cares about me right now. Everybody's too busy. And so having somebody pay attention to me and be able to look me in the eye and hold space for me while I'm sharing and helping me get my needs met is one of the most profound ways of healing neglect. The opposite of rejection is acceptance. When I'm feeling rejected, especially when my shame rejects me, what I really need is someone to tell me, hey, I believe in you. You're enough. And sometimes I'm able to turn to a higher power and get that from that higher power source. And sometimes I'm able to look in the mirror and I'm able to say it to myself. And sometimes I'm not able to do that because my wound is hurting so badly. I might need to turn to somebody else and say, hey, I'm really struggling here because I don't feel like I'm enough. Can you give me some feedback? Can you tell me that you accept me? The opposite of abandonment is presence. To be able to have somebody there holding space, knowing that they're not going to leave, but they're going to be there with you through thick and thin. They're going to be there and support you, and you know that they're there. The opposite of betrayal is trust. That even though you might have lost trust with a particular individual, to know that there are other people in your life that you can trust, that you can turn to, that you can lean on for support, and you know that they're going to be there for you. And the opposite of abuse is compassion and respect for boundaries. With this one, I need to know that you're going to treat me kindly, that you're going to be kind to me, and that you're not going to hurt me. But I also need to know that you're going to respect my boundaries, that when I say no, I mean no, and that you're going to honor that you're not going to invade that. As these needs begin to be met, we have the opportunity of rewriting the negative core beliefs. And that is truly how healing happens. We're able to go back to those three core beliefs, the I am genre. And now that people have shown up for me, and I've learned how to show up for myself, and I've learned how to turn perhaps to a higher power, and I've learned the beauty of that, I'm able to say, I am enough. I matter. I'm worthy of love and belonging. I learned that I can trust others. Other people are going to be there for me. I'm going to be there for me. I'm going to support and I'm going to stand up and be there for myself. My higher power might even be there for me if I have a higher power, and I can trust that. And lastly, I can tap into my own power. I have choices. I have the ability to choose how I want to respond in this situation. I have the ability to say yes. I have the ability to say no. I have the ability to take care of myself in ways that I did not recognize before. And the more that we practice that, and the more that we're able to tune into that, the more that we rewrite those negative core beliefs and create new neural pathways in our brain so that in the event that one of our attachment wounds is hit, instead of believing that I'm not enough, there's no one there, and I can't do anything, instead we believe I am enough. I matter. I have people in my life and I can do great things. I'm in the ninth grade. I'm in Mrs. Wixom's English class, and the announcements from school come on over the intercom. And they announce that there are going to be tryouts for the school play. Now, I am not going to be trying out for any kind of school play. Why in the world would I do that? I've just been bullied for the last 3 years, told that I'm not enough and that I don't matter and that there's something seriously wrong with me. Why in the world would I go try out for a play and the teacher is going to pick up on all of that and going to say, no, you're too short, you're too skinny, you don't know nothing. There's no way you can be in the school play, so forget it. No, I'm not going to try out. I was pretty set on that until Mrs. Wixom announced to the entire class that Troy is going to try out for the school play after school. What? I looked up. What? Yes, Troy, you're going to go try out for the school play after school. I am? Yep, that's what you're going to do. So Off I went because I'm obedient. I'm an obedient boy. And off I go and I try out for the school play and I am put into Shakespeare's A Midsummer's Night Dream. I can't even remember the part. I was shocked. I was surprised. And I am so eternally grateful for Mrs. Wixom's push to send me there because there I met my people. There I met my friends. And there I found people who loved me for me. As we wrap up, before I open it up for questions, I want you to think about who are some of your Mrs. Wixoms in your life? Who are some of the people that have been there for you, even when you were hurt, even when you were doubting yourself, even when the shadows of shame were raging terribly? Who were some of those people that urged you on, believed in you when you didn't? I'm going to give us a minute to think about those people, the love they have for you, the love that you have for them. And in your mind's eye, I want you to see their faces and think of the blessing that they've been in your life. The way that we heal attachment wounds is through connection. Thank you for spending time with me tonight and connecting with me. I'm going to open it up for questions. The easiest way for me to manage that is for you to raise your electronic hand, which you can find down in the participants button or the reactions button, depending on what type of device you're using.